This is Nasha Kasha, Ukrainian Almanac. 28 minutes of stories for everyone about Ukrainian life. Nasha Kasha is heard on 16 campus and community radio stations from Newfoundland to British Columbia. Vitayu. My name is Stefan Andrusiak, and this is episode 176. This story, the one you're about to hear, was recorded in Oliver, British Columbia. It's about a successful couple. They own a vineyard. And in case you're wondering, I do not accept remuneration for the stories that I tell.
Hi, Stefan.
Hi, Julie. Nice to meet you.
Really nice to meet you too. Hi, my name is Julie Martinick. I'm married to Lanny Martinick.
Hi, my name's Lanny Martinick. I'm a grape grower and I have a small winery in the Okanagan Valley.
We've raised our family here. I work a lot at the winery, but I'm also a pharmacist in another life.
Your ancestors, your maiden name was Green. Can you just give me a sense of where they're from and how they came to settle in Canada?
I have a father who is half Belgian, half English, so I have a lot of heritage from my Belgian grandmother. Didn't know my English grandparents very well, but on my mother's side, my mother is Hungarian.
Do you know when they came to Canada?
My mother's parents came, I believe, in 1911. They went to Cleveland, Ohio, and lived there for some time, and then ended up coming to northern Alberta, and that's where they were homesteading, in northern Alberta.
And where did you grow up as a child?
I was born here. I grew up here. I went to school here, and now I'm back here.
In Oliver, in the Oliver area?
In Oliver. And actually, we live probably 200 yards down the road from where I grew up.
What was it like growing up in this area?
It was great. I love the Okanagan, small town. Sometimes you get a little impatient with a small town. You like to go to the big city. And of course, I had a chance to do that when I went down to university in Vancouver. So I was at university for 6 years, and that's where I met Lanny, actually.
What makes you impatient with a small town?
It doesn't have the shopping, the entertainment, but it's a very safe place to be, a very nice place to grow up.
The Martiniques came to Alberta, I believe, in the 1890s and homesteaded in Smoky Lake. Then I believe they quit that and moved to Edmonton. And then my dad came out to BC in the early 30s. He rode the rails and was looking for work in BC during the Depression. He was actually married to my mom, and she stayed in Edmonton. Her family came from Saskatchewan, and she grew up in Edmonton. And then she came out to BC with him.
Do you know which part of Ukraine your ancestors came from?
I didn't get a lot of my parents' history. They were very conscious of sort of losing the immigrant stigma.
Conscious in that they wanted to lose it.
Yes, they did. They wanted to be as proper English as possible. So where we kept maybe the traditions of food, they didn't speak Ukrainian in front of us or anything. Just a few phrases. They were very conscious that they wanted us brought up to be just like every other English kid in school.
But they kept the Martinique name, and you are Martinique today.
Yes, that's true. I know a lot of Ukrainians had shortened their names, but my parents chose not to do that.
And what was it like growing up?
For the first 7 years, we were growing up in North Vancouver. My dad was a builder there. And then we moved out to the Fraser Valley.
Residential houses?
Residential houses and small apartments and things like that. Boy, North Van was pretty small then. The places that I can remember, I went fishing as a kid in little streams in North Van, where now it's just all high-rises.
Successful builder? Did you help him at all as a kid?
No, I was too small, and actually there were some slowdowns in the 50s, and he then became an electrician. So then he was an electrician, but there was a farm thing always in him from I believe Smoky Lake, because we moved to a small sort of hobby acreage in the Fraser Valley in Haney, and that's where I grew up from 7 to an adult.
Where is Smoky Lake in regards to Edmonton?
It's about 120 miles north of Edmonton, I believe. I know I went up there with some of my uncles and things like that. And I believe the family is actually on plaques as being one of the heritage families of northern Alberta.
Having come there as pioneers.
Yes, as homesteaders. And some of the stories about how tough it was in those days, like I know my dad and one of his brothers were, manning a hand plow behind a team of horses, and there had to be 2 of them because they literally weren't big enough to handle it on their own.
Моїм зелененьким, там горала дівчинонька воликом чорненьким, там горала дівчинонька воликом чорненьким. Орала, та й не наганять, не вміла гукати, та й наняла козаченька на скрипочку грати, та й наняла козаченька на скрипочку грати. Козаченько грає, дівчина гуляє.
Не так, бровами моргає, вражає його мати знай, на що він моргає.
Вражає його мати знає, на що він моргає.
I'm sure that plow encountered plenty of stones and rocks.
I'm sure it did. And what's interesting, and we'll probably get to that later in your interview, but the name of our winery is Stoneboat, and that's from the sledge called the Stoneboat that was used for clearing land. And I'm sure if you talk to Ukrainians where there's rocks, and you talk to the ancestors, they know what a stoneboat is. And before you go, we'll show you our Stoneboat, and our original land here in the Oliver area was cleared with a stone boat, and it represents just hard work, and that's why we kept the name.
You were good in science? Is that why you went into pharmacy?
Yes, I think so. I'm very much a people person, and I wanted to do something that would that I could be able to help people. I have a bachelor's degree in pharmacy, and I'm a licensed pharmacist.
How did you meet?
We met at a mutual friend's birthday party. We probably went out for about 7 years before we got married.
Was there something that intrigued you about this man?
Oh, yes, there was. Yes. He had a great imagination and very, very smart. Just seemed like there would be nothing that he couldn't do. Shortly after we met, he actually went to Nepal and went up to Everest Base Camp and did a lot of trekking in Nepal. And just, the fact that he could just sort of, I'm going to do it. That appealed to me.
What gave you that confidence?
At first, I really wasn't that confident. Coming out of high school, I got numerous jobs, and friends of mine and parents had more confidence in me than I had in myself. So my dad got me a job helping as an electrician's helper, and I was able to catch on to that very quickly and actually work up into control wiring for electrical. Then that was a slowdown. And so another friend thought I was good at it, so I went to work on towboats up and down the BC coast, and I was able to do that. That's what I was doing when I met Julie. I'm going to diversify a little bit because she said, she sort of liked all the things I thought I could do. It was more, I think, that I had a sports car and a motorcycle and worked on the towboats that attracted her than what I could or couldn't do. She really didn't know it at that time.
Well, that's what you think attracted her. She's just told you different.
Boy, she's been telling me different for a lot of years.
Do you remember meeting her for the first time?
Yes, absolutely. Remember the party and and everything about it. But at the time I met her, I was planning to go to Nepal. So it was a very casual relationship for the first year and a half or so. We actually got engaged, but at that time, as I advanced through different careers, I was in nuclear medicine and she was in pharmacy. The only good job she could get at the time was back in Oliver. So she actually spent 2 years up here in the Okanagan, and we were engaged before we got married. And we didn't have enough money to be flying back and forth, so I would be driving up a lot of weekends in a small sports car. It was great fun and everything, but it was truly a long-distance relationship.
Said I was in nuclear medicine. What does that mean?
It means that I was trained as a nuclear medicine technician, and I worked at Vancouver General Hospital, and we generally did all the radioactive pharmaceuticals for a lot of hospitals in BC. It was the research hospital for British Columbia, and we were associated with the nuclear cyclotron out at UBC, so we did experiments and everything else. And I worked a lot in what they called the hot lab in making these sterile radiopharmaceuticals. But I also worked doing imaging work. It's a diagnostic tool that's used still today in medicine.
Was winemaking a part of your past, or did you come up with this, or does every pharmacist think they can make wine?
Maybe that's more like it. Actually, yes. I thought winemaking would have been a wonderful career for me. And the thought of coming up and growing grapes and doing wine really appealed to me. I soon figured out very quickly, though, that I can't connect a hose properly. I usually would put things together backwards. I have no aptitude for putting equipment together. You know, winemakers have to be able to do that. So that dream kind of dissolved very quickly with me.
So you said, well, he knows how, I'll hook up with him.
Well, and the thing is I know the chemistry of winemaking and everything that's involved that way. So, you know, in theory, I can contribute that way, but hands-on, I'm not useful at all, but Lanny's much better at it. We moved to Vancouver after we got married. I left my job here and moved to Vancouver to be with Lanny. But we really were only there for probably 9 months or so. I guess we came up here one weekend in the winter after we were married, and an orchard just down the road from my parents' place came up for sale, and we went and spoke with the owners and decided to buy it at that time. It was 14 acres.
Can I ask what a 14-acre orchard cost way back then?
It was $150,000.
Those were big dollars for a newly married couple. Which year was that?
That was in 1979. We borrowed the down payment from both of our parents, and then we went hand in hand to Farm Credit, and they gave us a loan.
We didn't like the city, and literally we ran away screaming. We had no business plan. No, nothing. We saw this farm, and after an hour of talking to the farmer, we bought it on a handshake. Every penny from everywhere was spent trying to make the down payment, and even our down payment had to be done in payments. Like it was get $5,000 here and give it to the farmer, and the next $5,000. And he was a very religious man and a very honest man, and was very understanding. Like it's nothing you you'd do today.
Do you remember his name?
His name was Henry Weens. He actually helped through the first year. We couldn't move up because I still had to give notice and complete my job and everything. And so for 4 months, he just looked after the place. And after we bought it, he still lived in the house for another 3 months till the season was sort of on the wane, so that we could move in and he could move out. It was all just a gentleman's understanding. There was no contract.
Nasha Kasha comes to you from CHRW 94.9 FM on the campus of Western University in London, Ontario, Canada. We're heard on CHMR 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland, on CKDU 88.1 FM in Halifax, on local 107.3 FM in St. John, New Brunswick, on CJAS Radio 93.5 FM in Saint Augustine, Quebec, on CJLO 1690 AM in Montreal, on CFRC 101.9 FM in Kingston, on CFMU 93.3 FM in Hamilton, on CKMS 102.7 FM in Kitchener-Waterloo, on CJAM 99.1 FM in Windsor and Detroit, on CKLU 96.7 FM in Sudbury, on CILU 102.7 FM in Thunder Bay, on 101.5 UMFM in Winnipeg, on CFMQ 98.1 FM in Hudson Bay, Saskatchewan, on CFBX 92.5 FM in Kamloops, and on CIVL 101.7 FM in Abbotsford, British Columbia. I know you weren't the one connecting the hoses, but take me from the purchase of the property to your first bottle of wine.
We started out as an orchard, and back in the early 80s, prices just completely tanked. There was no money for apples, peaches, everything just kind of went sideways that way. We had neighbors who had a vineyard right next door to us, and they were talking with Lanny one morning. They said, "Hey, great peaches, you must get lots of money for these." And Lanny said, "Not really." And anyway, long story short, they convinced him to go to a grape growers meeting, and it was actually their influence that got us into growing grapes. So we slowly transferred over the orchard into a vineyard, acre by acre. And Lanny actually grew a lot of his own plants, like they're self-propagated plants. So actually every plant that's on these vineyards, and we have 45 acres of vineyard, virtually every plant is propagated by Lanny. We grew grapes for other wineries until probably the early 2000s or so, and started thinking, gee, they're making really nice wine with our grapes. Maybe we can have a winery. We had 3 sons that we thought would like to possibly be involved, and this would be a good business for them, and so that's why we got into the winery.
Can you explain a self-propagating plant? I don't understand the term.
It's actually a self-rooted plant. There's there's numerous ways of growing grape plants. Many grape plants are growing on a rootstock, which is different from the actual top of the plant. And they're grafted together or joined together. The rootstock has properties that could make it more efficient growing, but also resistant to some diseases and insects. And that's the main reason for using them. The other way you can do it is literally take the last year's cuttings, and if you heat them properly and grow them properly, you can make a plant from it. That one end of this literally stick will put roots out, and the other end will literally start growing leaves. And then you just plant that into the ground, and you will have a grape plant that is true to the plant you took the cuttings from. And the big thing is to make them true to type. When I started in the grape industry, we literally couldn't find any grape plants, and there weren't many imported plants. This would have been about 1983. So we literally had to grow our own plants and learn how to grow our own plants to be able to start growing grapes and get a grape contract. And I actually partnered with my neighbors, and we started growing grape plants, and it evolved into a separate industry in itself.
I take it was important for you to stay a pharmacist, even though all of this was going on, and I'm hearing there was some success with it financially.
It was. Farming is all consuming, especially because we had another business going on with the winery and everything. We lived and breathed wine, grapes every day. It was important to me to kind of keep my own identity away from the farm. I mean, at first, obviously, the income was important, but I've kept my own identity, and for me, it was nice just to get away for 2 or 3 days a week and do my thing.
Can I ask you now how maybe the values of each of your upbringings have reflected in what you're doing today, like your culture, or maybe some turning point in your life where you had an aha moment and that's stayed with you?
Once we got married and then realized we didn't like the city and that we wanted a quieter life and everything else, and moving to the Okanagan did that. And I think it's from growing up in our backgrounds, even if it's funny, like even though it's from a little farm and everything else, and you think you want to spend your life getting away from it, that somehow as you mature, it starts drawing you back. And I look back now and I absolutely marvel that the thing I've loved doing for the last 40 years, when I was a kid weeding gardens, I couldn't think of anything I hated more. All of the things that were probably inside us that we didn't know came out. The love of the land and the love of what we do has truly made us the people we are today. And I hope we've given that to our kids.
Lanny's right, actually. Some of my fondest memories were walking through my grandparents' gardens, picking radishes, turning on the little taps on the flumes, and walking with my grandfather. And you know, that I'm really happiest when I have dirt under my fingernails, honestly.
In today's episode, violinist Luann Homsey played the Hungarian Zsepazonyak Gyorzsdash. Oi za Hayim, a plowing song. It's a polyphonic project in Ukraine gathering traditional voices. Fleet rocked out with Doroha. It's a song about a road less taken. Jay Kuczynski played Borscht and Bluegrass. Привіт now sang Дівчина купається. It's a song about the green of summer. And we'll close with my best friends, Rushnichok. Чорні очка як терен, eyes as dark as the soil. Nasha Kasha is also a podcast. Partial funding for Nasha Kasha comes from the Taras Shevchenko Foundation. You know, he did many things, and so did you as a youth. Aren't you glad he didn't end up buying a tugboat?
Yes.
I mean, he could have done that instead of...
Absolutely. I don't think I would have been a very good sailor.
Tell me about your children and where this is all going.
It's a lot of work. We can't do it forever. We have 3 sons. All 3 have worked for us. All 3 have moved on to what they would term more exciting things. One's an Air Canada pilot. One's a researcher out at UBC, and the third, who worked with us for the longest and was a very great promoter of the winery and built it up, got tired of the glitz, and he's happy being a cook. But now we're saying to them, well, geez, guys, you know, we got to think about what we're going to do here. This is a lot of different things, and if you're not going to do it, we can't do it forever. And should we look at selling? But that's brought up a whole chain of emotions that they didn't think of. And Julie's mom's land, we farmed part of it too, and it was planted by her father. And so it's been very long in the family. And now she's moving off her land. And so do we keep it in the family? How do we divide it up? Do they stay with their careers? Do they inherit our careers? Maybe it isn't right for them. We've probably been too long at the dance, but the thing is, there's always one more song we want to dance to. I believe we've been blessed with a wonderful adventure. And, you know, from the time we got here, there's been calamities like our first drop in apple prices that drove us to go to grapes. And then when we went to grapes, the free trade agreement wiped out the grape industry here. And so we were doing ground crop and growing greenhouse tomatoes and cucumbers to survive until the grape industry picked up again. It forced me to get involved into the politics of the grape industry, and with the VQA program and the Wine Institute, I became part of that and was a founding director here of the Wine Institute, which forced the whole evolution of the grape industry as we now see it in BC. When we started, there were 12 wineries in BC, and now there's over 300. And this is in a period of 20, 25 years.
We've actually won several Governors General awards for our Pinot Noir. Our Pinotage is a unique variety that we've won a lot of awards for as well. Yes, every year, every competition tends to bring out some more medals.
I've just realized I want to be Governor General someday, because in order to give awards, you have to sample the wines, right? And you have to go through a whole lot of wines to know what the best is.
That's right, exactly.
Everything that's happened, they talk about business plans, but it's never worked out for us. It's circumstance right down to, oh man, I don't think I want kids. And then we were surprised with twins. You know, complete surprises and things that knock you off your feet can also turn out to be some of the best things in your life.
You knocked him off his feet.
I guess so, yes.
You know, even to a stranger, you can see there's a nice spark between the two of you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you very much, Stefan.
Thank you. You really noticed it. I didn't say it at the start, but that was one thing. Her eyes really sparkled.
Чорні очка, як терен, чорні очка, як терен, чорні очка, як терен, як терен, як терен, коли мися поберем, поберем. Поберемся в неділю, поберемся в неділю, поберемся в неділю, в неділю, маю надію. Заживемо у гаю, заживемо у гаю, заживемо у гаю, бо я тебе кохаю, заживемо у гаю, бо я тебе кохаю.
До милої зустрічі за тиждень часу, дорогі слухачі.